So yeah, I will get started. I am Christa Carmen. I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association, and I live in Westerly, Rhode Island. And I'm going to be reading a short piece entitled Shark Minute. It was recently published in a Night Frights anthology, and it's actually for slightly younger horror readers, but hopefully it'll be enjoyable for everyone. Okay. Shark Minute. A mother, father, and two young girls moved into an old, drafty house a half a mile from the sea. On the first night, the sisters were to sleep in their new bedroom. Their parents tucked them in, drew the curtains, and said from the doorway, "We know the house is small, but it'll be worth it to smell the salt breeze, to hear the distant sounds of waves lapping against the sand, and you'll get used to sharing a room in no time. You just wait and see." The sisters nodded obediently and recited their well-worn lines for sleeping tight and not letting the bedbugs bite. The older girl waited for the door to click shut behind them before turning to face her younger sister. Propping herself up on one elbow, she arranged her features into a scowl. "A rowboat has more space than this house." When the younger girl did not respond, the older sister's scowl deepened. "Maybe you don't mind, but I'm too old to have to share a room." She chewed her lip. "You should be in the room they want to turn into an office. I should get this room to myself." She scanned the space, pausing to take in the clock atop the nightstand. Almost asleep, the younger girl missed the narrowing of her sister's eyes, the shrewd smile that spread across her lips. "Look," the older girl whisper-shouted, startling the younger one all the way awake. "Look what time it is." The younger sister craned her neck so she could see the clock. 9:15, she said warily. "Exactly," the older girl exclaimed. "Exactly what?" "Exactly Shark Minute." "What's Shark Minute?" "What do you mean, what's Shark Minute?" When her younger sister continued to stare, the older girl shook her head incredulously. "Everyone knows 9:15 is the 1 minute of the night that the floor can turn to water, and the hammerheads and great white sharks circle the bedroom, searching for their prey. They're hoping for a dangling foot, a hand to trail over the side of the bed and feel around for a misplaced book or a fallen teddy bear so they can have themselves a snack. The worst thing that could happen, but the best case scenario for the sharks, is when some unfortunate little boy or girl decides they need to go to the bathroom, despite their mommy and daddy having already tucked them in. When they leave the safety of their bed and plunge to the floor below, chomp. To punctuate this last word, the older sister clapped her hands and smiled cheerfully at her sister. Voice quaking, the younger girl said, "There's no such thing as Shark Minute. You're just trying to scare me." The older girl shrugged. "Suit yourself, but it's your funeral if you don't believe me, and a watery one at that." Her eyes grew as big as sand dollars. "If you really didn't know about Shark Minute until now, it's a miracle you're still alive. Think of all those times you would have run back from the bathroom right at 9:14, or run for a drink of water at 9:16. With a bit of bad luck, you'd have been fish food." The younger girl tried to put forth a brave face, but a whimper of fear escaped her. She gripped the edge of the mattress with trembling fingers and ever so slowly leaned over the side of the bed. Her blonde curls bounced as she swiveled her head from side to side, scanning the dark blue carpet, which looked very much indeed like the deep blue sea, for a slate gray fin or a flash of blood-tinged teeth that meant Shark Minute was, somehow and against all odds, real. With the younger girl's attention diverted, the older one wrapped her hand around the glass of water their mother had placed on the single nightstand. Yet one more thing she had to share. Slick as an eel, she tipped the glass, sending ice-cold water trickling onto her sister's neck. She righted the glass at the sound of her sister's yelp and shot back against her pillow. "What happened?" she asked in her most innocent and curious of tones. "Water. I felt water on the back of my neck." "Ah," the older sister mused. "Not surprising for Shark Minute. It must have splashed up with the flick of one of their tail fins." The older girl pointed to the clock before the tears welling in her sister's eyes could fall. 9:16, she said, matter of fact. "We're safe." She shimmied down beneath the covers and shut her eyes. "Well, good night." Her sister could not say good night in return. She stared, unblinking, at the ceiling, limbs trembling, heart pounding, and was still staring when the first shaft of sunlight filtered through the cracks in the curtains. At 9:15 the following evening, the girl's mother was summoned to their bedroom by the sound of desperate sobs. "What's going on in here?" she demanded. "Mama," the younger girl babbled, "I turned down the sheets and the clock turned to 9:15 and the floor turned to water and the..." Story turned too scary, the older sister finished, managing to sound bored and apologetic at the same time. It's my fault. I told her a bedtime story and got a little carried away. I won't tell her another, promise. We'll go to bed now. Their mother frowned, but seemed to accept this explanation. Her expression softened and her hand moved toward the door. All right then, but no more stories before bed. I'd have thought you girls would be happy to spend some time together in this nice big room, not trying to scare one another silly. Now get some sleep. I'll make pancakes in the morning. The older girl took no time at all to fall asleep, but not even the promise of pancakes was enough to quell the other's anxieties. She clung to consciousness, listening for the sounds of crashing waves or breaching bodies. When sleep did claim her, her dreams were full of floors that fell into black, vast seas and creatures with quick and beady eyes tracking her in the dark. The older sister called attention to the clock each and every night at 9:15, and the younger girl's fear of being eaten by bedroom floor-dwelling sharks grew to the point of obsession. The sight of dark blue carpet could send her into a spiral, and every previously benign household object that resembled a triangle was a great white dorsal fin, shepherding her doom. Desperate to get to the bottom of her younger daughter's fear, the girl's mother brought her into her own bedroom, tucked her in, and insisted she take a nap, promising to watch over her all the while. When the girl awoke from her first untroubled sleep since moving into the old, drafty house a half a mile from the sea, her mother sat next to her on the bed, gently stroked her curls, and insisted she reveal the cause of her distress. It took a while for the mother to comprehend the whopper of a tale her eldest daughter had told. When she felt she'd heard the extent of it, she tucked the girl back into her bed, though it was only 7 p.m., and went in search of her cunningly inventive firstborn. Grounded for a month, prohibited from watching television, reading books, and anything else that might inspire stories to then traumatize her sister with, the older girl pounded up the stairs. She slammed the door of the odious shared bedroom, flopped onto the bed, and cried without restraint. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she cried some more. By the time she'd finished crying, the sky beyond the windows was dark, and the house was eerily silent. She lifted her face from the pillow in time to see her sister climbing into the opposite bed. The younger girl regarded her warily and began to suck her thumb. The older sister sneered. Tattling on me wasn't enough. You have to suck your thumb like a baby, too. I didn't tattle, she exclaimed. Mom made me tell. I thought that she could help. Bring in fishermen or something to catch the sharks, to transport them back to the real ocean. The older girl's glare was full of disgust. You still don't get it, do you? There are no sharks. The floor doesn't turn to water at 9:15. I made it up to scare you. I made it up so I could have this room all to myself. She grabbed the clock, the neon numbers across which read 9:15, and angled it toward her sister. Then she threw back the covers and stood on top of the bed. Don't, the younger sister cried. I believe you. I believe that it was just a joke. Now please, don't jump into the water. Stupid, the older girl declared. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Shark Minute is make-believe. The splash of water that followed her plummet was drowned out by her younger sister's screams. The younger girl watched her sister flail in roiling waters, helpless at the sight of a fast-approaching dorsal fin. The sound of their parents' footsteps came too slowly from down the hall. The seconds ticked by, steadily but agonizingly approaching 9:16. The younger girl caught her sister's gaze in that final fear-choked moment, leaned over the bed, and extended her hand. The older girl reached up from the water, and just before their fingers met, chomp. Thank you. Okay, so I will turn it over to Steve.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Belanger, and I've got a story called The Woods. It's a sad zombie love story, I guess, and I hope everyone likes it. So, The Woods. An hour ago, the wind cut the power, then died. The night is so still, I can hear snowflakes crackling tick, tick, tick against the glass. They freeze in a shimmering blurriness. I've killed the heat, so her body will keep. Turning times vary. And she's always loved me for my brains. We met trivia night Tuesday at the pizza bar. I'd pocketed my $50 at the register when she'd sidled up, reaching into tight jeans to pay her bill, saying goodbye to the packing up DJ. You know a lot of shit, she said, tucking thick strands of Puerto Rican hair behind her left ear. We sat back down and I bought more drinks and pizza. The first time we clanked our ugly steins, she said, I like a guy with brains. She died on her side about 20 minutes ago in our bed in the summer home by the bay. Ours is a small place, quiet and simple, like we'd been. Her last gasp was a blast of warm air against my hand. A misty eye dripped one last tear down her gray cheek onto my neck. I ran my fingers through her dry blue hair and whispered, "Well, that's it," to the dark, empty home and sighing wind. But of course it wasn't. You think a lot, you learn a lot, as you lie beside your dying loved one. And what you learn is, besides always being there for the one you love, nothing else matters. And if you got to do it twice, you do it twice. Just one other story from this world going to hell. My elderly neighbor was swinging his axe through dry, rotted wood when his wife came at him, pointing with her little handbrake, the one with the soft green grip she liked. She planted all three prongs in his back through the blue and red plaid shirt, then bit a small chunk out of his neck, leaving a rubber plate in there. He screamed and turned, still swinging his axe. I'd been lying with Susan when I heard the screams. She was in a coma by then. I ran out the front door. Greg was already at the wooden fence, his large hands clenching and unclenching two sharp pickets. Rivulets of watery blood ran down his plaid shirt and dried in his collar. A spurt had dotted his face like measles. His eyes were a wild orange yellow and very, very wide. Behind him, Emily's severed head grimaced and growled. Her gray hair blood pasted to her cheeks and neck. The body spurted blood, her fingers spasm digging the dirt. Emily probably had another heart attack and turned in the greenhouse, Greg said, too calmly, as if we were standing at the fence talking about the socks. Take care of yourself, Bob. Tell Susan I said hello. Stay inside. Don't let me come near you. Don't let anybody come near you. He let go of the fence and turned away. He slowly crossed the grass strip between the sidewalk and the street, the hand rake protruding from his back like an exclamation point. His wife's upper plate fell off when he swatted it away. That was a month ago, a year after Susan's diagnosis, 6 months since everything else happened, when the hospital gave us a bed on wheels, a morphine drip, and a good luck, bye-bye now. Better than an axe to your neck and a few bites, I guess, but then again, Greg only had to watch his wife die once. The house has a loud silence, echoes of happier times. A thin layer of snow blankets the beckoning woods. The icy cove glistens beyond the trees, past the golf courses and the docks. Every few minutes, the foghorn wails in the distance, and a beam of light cuts through the treetops. It's a cry of loneliness, but also of hope. The lighthouse keeper apparently is safe. His beam is the only light in the darkness. It's lovely terrible, and I can't look away. She'll wake soon. I can't watch her die a second time. And I don't want to turn either. In the woods, near the shore beyond my window, looms a huge maple tree with long, thick arms and a massive, knotty trunk. I've sat against its solid base, 100 yards from the shore, as the world collapsed and my wife coma slept. It's a giant in the mist. It's a fine place to sit, eyes closed and ears open, to freeze amidst its peace in solid silence. Our bedroom and the bathroom and the living room all tentacle from the kitchen. The bedroom door is heavy and thick, with deep-cut rectangles and chipped wood-colored paint. Large keyhole, large red doorknob. I've unlocked the door and nudged it open. The darkness within is as solid as the night. An old box spring squeaks, ruffling of old pillows as Susan's body rises. Sheets and blankets rustle. A creaking floorboard as first one foot, then another rests upon it. My wife sits poised on the bed. From the darkness, I see two orbs of a weird orange-yellow glaring right at me. It's hard to look away, but I do. I stand and open the front door. Freezing air, wind-blown sheets of light snow, the faint bellowing foghorn, the solid beam of light cutting through the darkness, the billowing, beckoning woods. The bedroom door scrapes, footfalls in the doorway. My name is a dry, faint whisper from the dark. The kitchen's floorboards creak beneath her slow footsteps. She smells like cold, dry, musty death. I'm outside, walking toward the woods. The light beam brightens the dark sky. I hear the waves licking the shore and the docks in the distance. Susan staggers through the doorway and steps slowly down the wooden stairs. The floodlight turns on. Her bare feet leave tracks in the snow. Her thin, untied hospital gown ripples in the wind. Her lips flutter like a badly drawn cartoon. I can't hear what she says. She follows. We're in the woods now. Ice crystals cross my eyelids and skin. Soon, we'll both freeze to death against our favorite tree. I keep going. Her feet shuffle behind me in the snow. In moments, we're sitting against the tree, together. The sighing breeze carries her dry, brittle voice through the light-pierced dark. She leans closer and closer and closer to me. Her breath is a rotting corpse. Her whisper is a crisp, final clarity as her mouth opens and her teeth are very, very large. I've always loved you for your brains. That's it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, we are now going to have Lauren take it away.
Thank you. I'm reading a true paranormal encounter. The title is Spooned by the Dead. It's a little bit of humor in this. I'm way too chicken shit for this. I stumbled from the stall and ran cold water over my hands. The bar soap slipped and spun across the porcelain. In the mirror, my eyes were wet. I was pale as a ghost myself. My hair hung over my shoulder, hopefully making it harder to tug. I rinsed away suds, my heart thundering, fingers trembling. Don't let it show. I twisted the faucet tap. He wants you to scream. Reached for a paper towel, my hands fluttered. He wants you to run. Paper crunched in my fists. Don't run. In May 1996, I stood alone in the basement bathroom of the Moss Beach Distillery, about 25 miles south of San Francisco. It was well before Nuke's Top 5, when electromagnetic field reader apps and the litany of ghost hunter shows were still years away. And really, I was no ghost hunter. My pocket camera had half a roll of film in it, and I had scant paranormal investigations etiquette. Despite tracking ghost story archives for America's haunted hotspots on Netscape, I was pretty unprepared. JC, my friend from high school and then resident of the Castro, was back upstairs at our table by the window. I imagined him where I should have been, gazing out at the glittering Pacific, glass and apple white in my hand. But no. Since the episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired in 1992, visitors like me had routinely stalked the distillery. With a backstory of a lover's trysting place and a prohibition speakeasy, the restaurant had the perfect waterfront perch to spot police cars on the winding approach. Over the years, scores of visitors reported seeing the Blue Lady stroll the beach below, shimmering with salt water and clots of seaweed, and as she trailed sandy, wet footprints before disappearing. But she may have just been one of the many personalities who clung to that place. Lethal car wrecks, love triangles, and boarding house despair had cast long shadows. After lunch, when I asked JC to descend the damp cellar stairs with me, he declined. I got you this far. You're on your own. Now I took great care drying my hands downstairs, even though it was killing me. Someone was there in that small space, close and seething. And in that same hot moment, I understood that I'd been rude. I should probably explain how I got there. Like many dedicated ghost hunters out there, a particular incident spurred me into the murky world of dank basements and tragic stories. When I was 25, a few months prior to visiting the Californian speakeasy, I was lying alone in bed at a Newark airport hotel, frozen in the dark, and watching what the Ghostbusters team may have called a Class 4 full-body apparition. February weather had grounded planes all over the East Coast, and while navigating delays and traveling home, about 30 of my publishing colleagues and I arrived into Newark after 11, missing all of our connections to various cities across the country. The then Continental Airlines flight attendants handed out hotel vouchers and pointed us towards a shuttle van. Grumbling, exhausted, and entirely sick of each other after a team building exercise that would never end, we shuffled into the hotel lobby with our luggage where reception's graveyard shift suddenly appeared. Check-in was slow and rooms were assigned at a death crawl. After about 20 minutes, one of our sales managers from LA popped. Her voice hit that certain keen that meant she couldn't endure one more possible delay. And so when I was given a key card before she was, I handed it over and waited for the next one. I was assigned room 237 with no idea how that little room swap would change everything. A wake-up call was scheduled for 4:30 to get me on the first flight to Boston, and by 1 a.m., I'd crawled into bed. I closed my eyes. At 3:17, I opened them. Aquamarine numbers came into focus from the digital clock on the bedside table. Gradually, I remembered where I was, a hotel room lying in the same position I'd fallen asleep, and just beyond the clock, a faint shape drew my eye to the table and chairs that sit in every hotel room. Before the window, where the curtains were drawn, was a man. There's a man in my room. I held my breath. Something was off. He was lighter than the darkness around him and composed of grainy shades of gray like an image from an old black and white television. He was undoing his dress shirt, one careful button at a time, in deadly silence. As I panned down his figure, I saw that he faded out below the knees, and while the rest of him had a crisp, definable edge. From his profile, he looked in his 60s. He was clean-shaven, bald with a rim of short hair and a pot belly. He gazed in the direction of the wall. He was in boxer shorts, and after undoing the last button, he withdrew his arms from the sleeves, revealing a pale T-shirt. Any rustle of fabric was muted when he gave his shirt a little shake. Steadily, he approached one of the chairs, and no feet shuffled on the carpet, and the contours of the curtains, long, wavy, vertical shadows, were visible through his head and torso. My eyes burned. I was afraid to blink. Under the bedsheet, I dug my thumbnail into my thigh to see if I was awake. It hurt. I was awake. The man hung his shirt over the back of a chair, and I wondered why I was calm instead of terrified. Was it because he was so fastidious with his clothing? No, I was afraid. No, I wasn't afraid because he hadn't turned toward me. If he looks at me, I'll hit the ceiling and die. But he never noticed me. He stayed by the table for a long time, as if the seconds ticked more deliberately for him. And when I couldn't take the tension anymore, when I decided I did not want to experience the weight of his gaze, I rolled over and faced the wall. I imagined for a moment that I was the sales manager from LA who once told me the only things that were real were sales targets. I told myself it was exhaustion, just a dream, nothing was there, until I felt the man sit, then lie on the bed right behind me. Spooned by the dead. When I worked up the nerve, I slid my hand back and nothing. There was nothing there, only cold sheets. And I wondered if I'd just seen the ghost of a man who died in his sleep right there, one who had no idea he was dead. And if every night he folded his shirt with the same care he did in life, thinking he'd get up in the morning when he would not. I closed my eyes just before the wake-up call jolted me upright. In the shower, I examined the mark I left on my thigh and wondered why I felt nothing in that room. It was just a standard issue, polyester-infused airport hotel room. After one last look, I wheeled my travel bag into the hallway and shut the door. On the van returning us to the terminal, a coworker asked me how my night was, and I told him a little too much. He sat quietly as we rumbled past Hertz rental signs in the early morning light. Finally, he shook his head. I wouldn't tell anyone else if I were you. I didn't, for a while anyway. But later that day, when we were all back at the office, I closed my door and called the hotel and asked to speak to the manager. When she answered brightly, I said I was with the publishing company last night and asked her to thank the staff for looking after us. Then I said, I just wonder, sensing the fragility of the direction I wanted to go, if I could ask you something. Sure, I'm happy to help. I wonder if anything strange has been reported about room 237, because I'm very sorry if you were inconvenienced in any way, but I didn't but I'm very sorry if you were inconvenienced in any way. And she hung up. I didn't call her back. Maybe the publishing part frightened her, and I knew I'd never find out if a man had indeed died in that bed. Still, I was left with an insatiable need to understand what I'd seen, even if my efforts led nowhere. I prowled the internet seeking patterns in paranormal accounts, message boards, and discussion threads that describe ghosts as silent or grainy or vaporizing below the knees, and even as oblivious to the presence of the living trapped in their routines in dismal fashion. About a month later, when my boss offered me a plane ticket, I booked a long weekend to see JC in San Francisco. I also phoned a coworker there, Sky, who told me she kept a huge amethyst on her desk. I knew it was safe to talk to her when she told me previously that her mother nearly fainted from what she called the energy at the Winchester Mansion in San Jose. By then, I'd read a lot about the Moss Beach distillery, and when I asked Sky, she encouraged me. Oh, yeah. There's a piano player in there. He hangs around the ladies' room downstairs. He yanks women's hair. Watch out for him. So I rented a Chrysler, got a room at Fisherman's Wharf, and told JC I'd pick him up. He was disappointed when I didn't get a convertible. At the distillery, I descended the stairs with my camera. When I saw the bathroom door, I stopped and listened. It was quiet, no running water, just pregnant silence. I threw open the door, and with a sharp flash of light, I snapped a picture. It would be a couple of weeks before I'd find out that all I got was a shot of an old mauve bathroom, not even an orb. The restroom was dank, but it wasn't terribly creepy. A typical restroom for a richly historic place. It was gummy with time, and the sink was stained by a drippy faucet. Feeling foolish now, I tucked into a stall and latched the door. I flushed and unlatched. I took one step from that stall, and someone pounced. It was ferocious, like a bucket of ice water had been dropped on my head, and a freezing sensation rushed over my entire body, from my scalp to my feet. It struck me straight to the bone. I wobbled, but stayed upright. The piano player? I placed a hand to my hair and held it tightly. Whoever it was, someone had waited outside my stall before slapping me stupid from another dimension. Way too chicken shit for this. I washed up slowly, refusing to run screaming from that bathroom. When I turned to leave, I paused. I imagined for a moment what it was like to have people constantly poking about, throwing open doors, flashing cameras. I placed my hand on the door. I'm sorry. That was rude, and I'm really, really sorry. When I returned to our table, JC was folding his napkin. Well, did you get what you came for? I exhaled before I looked him in the eye. Oh my God, he said. You have no color in your face. What the hell happened down there? I got jumped. Let's go. In the car, I told him now it was twice I'd been spooned by the dead, and really, I was done. Only I wasn't. I couldn't shake the need to grapple with this. The following April, I asked JC to meet me in Phoenix so we could spend the night at the ridiculously haunted Grand Hotel in Jerome and have a beer at Big Nose Kate's Saloon in Tombstone. Sure, he said. Rent a convertible. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. We are now going to have Joshua Rex read.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Rex. It's good to be here with my colleagues today reading, and it's an inaugural HWA Rhode Island reading, and thanks to Christa for setting it up. I'm going to be reading a segment from a story called The Passing, which is in Nightscape 7, which was published this month. It's called The Passing. You are here to watch me die, the old woman said. She did not look near death, at least not to Klaus, nor did he understand why, of all the children gathered downstairs in the parlor, he alone had been summoned to his grandmother's room in the attic of the 5-floor Zoberstab Werkhaus, which she occupied like its brain, or, in keeping with her nickname, Eine Wespe. Whether or not she actually resembled one, Klaus didn't know, for none of the children had ever seen her. Klaus had been playing Elfern with his cousin Ingrid and was turning over the King of Leaves card when his mother appeared in the doorway between the dining room, where all the Zoberstab elders had gathered, and the parlor. She held a lantern at her tapered waist, and around her wrist hung a large iron ring loaded with barrel keys. She was pale as the face on the cameo at her throat. The grandfather clock along the west wall, steady as a strong heart, ticked several long moments before she spoke. Klaus, deine Großmutter Zauberstab would like to see you. His cousins looked up, each regarding him with identical expressions of trepidation. She wants to see me, Mother, Klaus said. That is what I said, his mother replied sharply. Come, Gerard. The staircase was of dark wood and creaked like the hull of a galley on a roiling sea. Klaus had never been beyond the first level of the family house. In the upper floors, the shadows seemed to gather like smoke, obscuring the archaic furniture and window coverings. The rooms were tomb-sized, filled with breath-smothering dust. The objects Klaus was able to glimpse in the steadily decreasing light seemed incongruously old, as if by mounting the stairs, he was walking back along an ink-drawn timeline on a leaf of ancient vellum. On the landing of the third floor, his mother drew a match from her chatelaine, struck it, and lit the lantern, the flames swelling warmly on the wick. Klaus gasped as the corridor filled with faces. His ancestors' paint-crackled visages stared at him imploringly, some so vividly rendered they seemed to be peering through midnight windows, their hands or elbows resting on the edges of the frames as if they were sills. He thought that he might actually know some of their names. He was always asking his mother about his Vorfahren, particularly those on her side. His father knew little and cared little of his own Baden heritage. The portraits were so lifelike, it was eerie to think that only a moment ago they had been looking into darkness. His mother was mounting the next set of stairs, the cadence of her step even and unequivocal as the grandfather clock. As she moved, the light went with her, again shrouding the faces. Klaus scurried up after her, glimpsing more family members on the subsequent levels. His mother moved quickly, and so he was allotted only an ephemeral peek, but he noted that the likenesses became smaller and less ably wrought, austere, with crude lines and sparse coloring. They were also very, very old, rendered on wood panels and plaster rather than canvas. As the lantern light trailed along them, it glinted off facets of bright, saturated color and gilded contours, jewels, gems, even a few crowns. The fifth level was a single long passage. The floor was carpeted or coated with what felt like moss. Klaus's footsteps became muted and his mother's trailing skirts hissed as they dragged along it. Ahead on the far left was a low arched door, rich gold brown in color, streaked with what looked like resin and deeply scored. As his mother approached it, she lifted the key ring, and after several moments of nervous fumbling and sorting, she isolated one and slid it in the antiquated lock. The mechanism turned with a grinding click, and the door opened slowly and ponderously, revealing the first 3 steps of a narrow, winding stair. A smell like moldering leaves wafted down from the space above, accompanied by a hoarse yet stalwartly voice. Komm her, Junge. The words and the way they'd been spoken reminded Klaus of a witch from one of the Markens his mother would read him. He looked at her now, his expression one of panic in the dim lantern light. She knelt, brushed his tow-colored hair back with one quavering hand, and held his face. Her eyes were moist as they brazenly scanned him, as if trying to memorize every detail. She reached in her pocket and drew out a small black book and a necklace of dark beads. Klaus recognized these, though he did not understand why they were being given to him now. She placed the necklace over his head and put the book in his hand. Then she pulled him to her and held him in a desperate embrace, pressing her lips to his forehead before turning him toward the door. Oma Vespa is waiting, she said. Her words were strangely flat, belying the prior ardent display of physical affection. You will wait for me, yes, Klaus said, his eyes moving to the lantern. The thought of walking back alone in the black through which they'd just passed seemed incomprehensible. Go on, his mother said sternly. Klaus glanced back several times as he started up, making certain that she had not left, that the light had not left. His mother appeared calm, though her expression seemed deceptively impassive. As he approached the top step, he heard the door close and lock behind him. He had a vision of her in that moment, retreating hurriedly through the hour-woven shadows, lanterns swaying, the twisted wooden furniture and the countenances rendered in tempera and oil flashing like things illuminated by lightning as she fled. "Come, come, your mother has not left you," the voice above beckoned. It seemed to draw Klaus toward it, up the remaining stairs. The stink of rotting leaves grew more pungent, combining with the sweet scent of the aged rafters into a sort of cloying musk. Klaus became aware of his thundering heart, beating triple time in relation to the cadence of his shoes scraping dryly on the steps. His fear was extreme, but he found that he could not account for it. For inscrutable as Oma Vespa was, as frighteningly as his relatives depicted her, or in their presumably apocryphal tales concerning the old woman's startling intuition, the way she seemed to know everything about them, she was still his grandmother, his great-great-great-grandmother, astoundingly. And she had, after all, favored him over the others with her gifts, like the black book the size of a deck of playing cards with EDDA embossed on the leather cover, the language so arcane and the fractal font so ornate, Klaus couldn't tell if it was a collection of verse or stories or spells. And the equally enigmatic necklace of ash tree beads arranged rosary-like on a silver strand which ended in a small wooden horse. The passage of these precious family artifacts to a 9-year-old boy had caused a fractious and acrimonious schism among the elder Zoberstabs. Klaus had heard his mother relaying to his father Oma Vespa's words as she had entrusted the objects to her great-great-granddaughter to be given to Klaus. "You must be cautious with him at all times, Johanna. The boy is a root, and the others like the gnawing dragon. He is the only living Zoberstab able to bear the green crown. He is vital to you all." Klaus had held the items only once, in his bedroom with his parents standing side by side before him, regarding him with uncharacteristic apprehension. After a few moments of bewildered examination, Klaus had handed them back to his mother, who, reaffirming as if reading from a decree that they would and always would be his, placed the items in a bureau drawer and locked it. He had not seen them again until now. But emerging on the top step, Klaus felt all at once ridiculous at having been so afraid. What had he been expecting? Certainly something more imposing than the plain old woman seated in a plain old chair. The room was likewise as ascetic. There was a simple bed beneath a diminutive square window under the eaves. The window was occluded by a wooden shutter, which was latched with a single bent nail crooked through a metal loop. The bare pitched space was lit only by 3 tallow tapers stuck on the spikes of a crude wrought iron candelabrum standing on a simple wooden table to the right of the chair. Oma Vespa herself was gnarled and mummy gaunt, with a thick white mane of wild clotted locks glazed with a dull sheen the color of green lichen. The candlelight projected a silhouette of her hair onto the slanting ceiling above where she sat. Strangely, the shadows were inverted, casting an image of what appeared to be the bent branches of an immense winter tree. Her dress was somewhat contemporary, within the last quarter century or so, and the flat black of full mourning. Her eyes, in contrast, were so thick with cataracts they seemed to glow like twin moons. She was staring ahead as if considering a piece of exceptional art or music, but there was no painting to be seen here, nor pianist performing some hauntingly emotive sonata. Blind as they appeared, the eyes shifted, locating Klaus. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, now that the Halloween spooky atmosphere and dread has been ratcheted up to 100, we will close it out with Curtis.
All right, thank you guys. I'm Curtis M. Lawson, and I'm going to try to squeeze in a short one and a shorter one, which I think I can do. So this first one is called She Born of Naught, and I think Josh is one of the only people who's ever read it. It will be in my next collection. Never loved. Love was a stranger until I met her. She, born of naught, summoned from the abyssal nothing. She, born of naught, given form by my thoughts, my needs, my prayers. She, born of naught, the whore of uncreation. I tried to find love before her. There's somebody out there for everyone, they say. The world is wide and deep and full. But I learned after years of searching for meaning that the world is not deep. No, it's not even shallow. Yes, I ripped that last part off and probably butchered it. It's a secondhand insight from a first-rate fool, the musing of a dead intellectual who possessed enough hubris to try and make sense of existence in that which lies before and beyond it. But that's unimportant. All that matters is her. At first, you wouldn't believe she was nothing given shape. The curves and dark sheen of her body, the sexy purr that echoes from deep within her, the je ne sais quoi that comes from the perfect balance of class and danger. The more you stare at her, and trust me, you can't help but stare, the more you realize just how perfect she is. And nothing is perfect. She came about the way most things do, as a dream, then amusing, and finally rendered in physical form. I'm not sure exactly how, but her birth was slow. It always reminded me of that Johnny Cash song, the one where he builds his car one stolen piece at a time. That's not quite how she came together in my garage, but close enough. I didn't assemble her one piece at a time, but that's just how she grew each day. And I didn't steal from Ford or Chevy to make her, but I stole from somewhere, even if I didn't mean to. None of her parts came from Detroit or Wolfsburg. You can't order an injector pump for her at O'Reilly's or get an odometer from AutoZone. Each pump, bolt, and tube inside her is unique and integrated. She's organic, as much as you or I, a creature of living steel with a black hole soul. I watched her gestation for 9 full moons. She was just a steel frame at first, but soon she was more. Springs and axles grew out of her metal bones as she sweated grease and oil. Tubes, belts, and cables grew like hair. Glass formed in the mirrors and windows, like those crystal science kits you buy for little kids. I fell in love with her before she was even whole. I think I was in love with her when she was just a thought, to be honest. I'd like to think that it was my love that brought her into the world, that I channeled her from the void beyond existence. I'd like to think that she came because she loves me back. And she does love me, even if others can't see it. I'm her world, and she is my oblivion. Everything else is roadkill. Never sure. I was never sure about anything until I was sure about her. I couldn't stick with a job, couldn't stick with a chick, couldn't stick with a god. Nothing ever made sense to me, and it took finding her to realize that that was okay. Nothing made sense, and that's all that needed to. In her, I found my religion. So I cut my ties with everything and everyone. I don't need a woman because she is my woman. I don't need a job because she is my job. I don't need a home because she is my home. Never whole. You never realize how alone you are, how incomplete, until you aren't. It's wild what love can show you. Wilder still what it can do for you. I don't eat anymore because her love sustains me. I don't sleep because I find peace in her embrace. It works both ways, of course. My love fuels her. She doesn't run off something as crude as gasoline. She runs off of me, my passion, my pain, my blood, my life. There's this cliche that couples in love complete each other, that they become one. But in our case, it's true. We've grown into one another quite literally. My animal veins melding with her rubber arteries, her steel cables piercing my flesh and intertwining with the gristle beneath. My heart pumps in rhythm with her fuel injector. Every mile on her odometer adds another wrinkle to my face, another gray to my hair. Never question. Life never made sense before. I second-guessed everything. Nothing was beyond scrutiny. No taboo, no dogma, no sacred wisdom. I had the answer all along, of course. Only nothing was beyond scrutiny. Her I never questioned. Not when she was just an image in my mind. Not when she grew from naught into a 2-ton machine. Not when she whispered murderous fantasies from her speakers. I never flinched when we ran those people down beneath the full moon, reducing them to nothing. I never asked why we left them broken on the asphalt. I never asked how many more, not after the first, nor after any of the 7 that followed. Never alive. None of their lives mattered because life is an illusion. What is life? A haphazard series of chemical reactions? What's the difference between any of us and a dead seagull caught in the plastic rings of a six-pack? A bit of metabolism and some firing neurons? We're all just breathing, pissing hunks of meat. We insist on placing ourselves at the center of the cosmos, but our very beings, our souls, if you will, are just chemical side effects as insignificant as the heat and foam that comes from mixing vinegar with baking soda. We're just as fleeting, too. One moment we're killing and fucking and singing, then you blink and we're heaps of compost beneath tarnished brass markers. Nothing is forever. Never alone. Together we race down bleak highways and abandoned roads. Her tires rip up blacktop and leave tracks of pre-cosmic emptiness in their wake. The illumination from streetlights and stars gets siphoned in through the lenses of her headlights. Her intake manifold steals a breath from any living thing we pass, leaving their lungs empty and collapsed. Mile by mile, we bring more nothing into this world. Never dead. We butchered 8 people under the moonlight, a smear in the road for each month from January to August. I never asked how many more because I knew it in my heart. There were 9 to destroy, and I am the last of their number. I'll have no mourners and there will be no funeral. My final ride won't be in a hearse at the head of some mournful procession. No, it will be a drag race against space and time. The glass on the speedometer will crack as we pin the needle to the right. My skin will tear and my bones will shatter as we careen through the veil between this place and the infinite. Our bodies will crumple and fold, her steel and glass merging more intimately with my flesh upon impact. My blood will spill and flow through her ruined form. We will be one, not just with each other, but with that which came before all of this, and that which awaits at the other end. Never regret. That was She Born of Not. Do I have time for a tiny short one?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. This is from Devil's Night, which is fitting because tonight is Devil's Night. And this is called Fire Sermon. Brothers and sisters, we are gathered here tonight to join in solidarity against the encroaching darkness. We come together to take a stand, to reject crime, I messed up already, the pain and the sin of this world and its prince. We come together as one to embrace the light. Beyond these hallowed walls, a city is burning. Greedy, weak-willed men scramble about for Satan's shallow offerings. They fight, steal, and destroy for scraps of cash, for reputation and respect, or for simple, carnal pleasure. They light fires, desperate for the warmth that they shall never know because they choose to dwell outside of God's light. But let's talk about fire for a moment, shall we? Fire is a tool born of the Lord. It's a force of purification, from Michael's flaming sword to the ovens that kill bacteria in our food. God hath rained it upon his enemies in biblical time, and Mother Church used it to purge wickedness and sin not so long ago. Before the lies of the modern age, before rationalist charlatans tried to erase the miraculous, we knew that a barrier of holy fire lay between the worlds we could see and heaven itself. So if fire is a holy thing, why would God Almighty allow the wicked to misuse it? Why, in all his wisdom, would he allow these savages to use a sacred force to kill and destroy? Why would he let destitute men and women get trapped in burning buildings and allow firefighters to perish, choked by toxic smoke and roasted by heat? Well, the first thing you must remember, and remember this well, is that God makes no mistakes. And second, in his infinite grace, the Lord gave us free will, just as he gave us fire. And why would he bestow such dangerous gifts? Because they are the keys that open the door between this hell we call earth, this imperfect creation of the demiurge, ruled by the serpent of Eden, in heaven itself. But these keys, brothers and sisters, they must be used in conjunction. I spoke of the holy inferno that separates this world and all others in the night sky from the invisible and perfect. It is a pure flame, born of God's incredible love, and no wicked thing can pass through it. Only those armored in faith can hope to walk through the burning gates of the Welkin and become one with the infinite. To wear the armor of faith, now that is a choice. And that is what I mean when I say that the keys to heaven, fire, and free will must be used in conjunction. That is why the vengeful and godless are burning to death across Detroit tonight, and why their death shall lead to oblivion, because they are not armored in faith. They play with holy fire as if it were a toy, or they have the hubris to presume they can extinguish the sacred power without seeking God's grace. But we, brothers and sisters, we know better, and that is why we are gathered to seek out the grace of God. Now, I see some of you crying in the pews. I see some of you struggling against your bonds or squirming as Brother Holloway and Sister Sylvia approach you with the baptismal kerosene. But fear not, brothers and sisters, our journey is only beginning. Oh, I have such sights to show you. Our shared faith has brought us to this moment, to this celebration of the light, into the precipice of the sacred inferno. Let the devils have this night. Let them have the whole damn world, in fact. We, brothers and sisters, our congregation that has been so misunderstood and maligned by the unfaithful and uninitiated, we shall soon be one with eternity. Clad in the armor of faith, we shall embrace the cleansing fire and step through that burning gauntlet, purified and worthy to sit at the table of the Lord. And that clocks in at 666 words.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat. So thank you everyone who tuned in to watch and to participate. We're so excited. Like Josh mentioned, this was the inaugural Rhode Island Horror Writers Chapter event. Unfortunately, not in person, but fortunately, because it allows for a great many more people all over the place to join. So yeah, I will just take this moment to say, if you are a horror writer in Rhode Island, if you are a fan of horror writing in Rhode Island, if you are a member of the HWA already, or if you are interested in becoming a member, if you are somebody that used to live in Rhode Island and have moved away, or lives in Rhode Island now, whatever the case, whatever your connection to horror writing and Rhode Island is, give the HWA Rhode Island chapter a look. We have a Facebook page. You're watching us on the YouTube channel. We have all of our chapter meetings posted, so you can get a feel for the types of things that we discuss and the events that we're planning and other upcoming things that we're going to be putting out there. Hopefully this is the first of plenty more virtual readings and some in person as well. So any of our other panelists want to say a thank you or anything in particular?
I just want to say great stories, everyone, and I had a great time.
Yeah,
wish my Wi-Fi worked a little bit better.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you
Happy
again.
Halloween down under, Lauren.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, everybody, have a great night.